Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So the case that I have for you guys today is one that is solved, but it has a lot of uncomfortable information that is very difficult to listen to, all of which I will explain in just a minute. But before we get into today's video, I just wanted to go ahead and say a big thank you to today's sponsor, Care Of. Care Of helps you find the right vitamins and supplements that are personalized just for you. Their products are made with clean ingredients that are good for you and are backed by science. They don't have any unnecessary fillers or artificial flavors, and they are very transparent about the research done and the sourcing behind every product. Care Of makes it so easy to find out what you personally need through their holistic online quiz that takes you through a series of questions about your diet, lifestyle, and health concerns to help you get the best vitamins to address your specific wellness goals. I also use their plant protein to get that extra bit of protein that I lack in my everyday diet. They come in these little compostable vitamin packs that each have the vitamins that you take in a day sorted out for you so nicely, which saves me so much space because I usually have several little bottles of all of the supplements that I have in my nightstand, and I end up either knocking some over looking for certain ones, or they get pushed to the back of my drawer, which causes me to forget to take them all together, which isn't good because when it comes to your daily vitamins, you need to be consistent with them in order to get the health benefits from them. May is all about spring cleaning, so why not take it as an opportunity to clean out your medicine cabinet and replace all of those different bottles with a sleek box full of packets of vitamins that are already laid out for you for each day. They even have your name printed right on them, so it just makes it feel even more personalized just for you. And like I said, the little packets are compostable, and if you want to learn how to compost, there will be a link down below with instructions on how to do so. So go ahead and take Care Of's quiz to see what vitamins and supplements they recommend for you. Click the link down below and use my code RachelShan, that's RachelShan, for 50% off of your first month of Care Of, which is literally just such an amazing deal to me. They literally make it so easy to keep track of your wellness goals and help you reach your full wellness potential. Thank you to Care Of for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so with all of that being said, let's get into the video. So the case that I have for you guys today, like I said, is very uncomfortable, but it's interesting for many reasons. First, it's one of those cases that truly resonated with me and evoked such an emotional response as I was researching. I do want to first warn each and every one of you that this case does involve a lot of sexual assault, and there are a lot of details that are very, very difficult and uncomfortable to listen to. I tried my best to leave out certain details that are just unnecessarily graphic, but even with those details left out, it can still be so uncomfortable to listen to and very triggering for anybody who has gone through a similar experience. There was part of this when I was reading testimony from a woman involved in this case, and the details literally made me so uncomfortable that I physically felt my chest get tight and my stomach just was in knots, and I almost felt like I couldn't breathe. I had to take a break from this case and just separate myself from the situation for a few minutes because honestly, that reaction has never happened before. I'm usually able to separate myself from these cases, but this one is just different. I was just so uncomfortable, and it almost made me not want to cover this case, but then I realized that the cases that are the most uncomfortable to talk about are sometimes the most important to talk about. But if this is something that you are very sensitive to, which I know a lot of people are, please go ahead and either skip those details or just click off of this video altogether. The other thing about this case was that I actually spent about a month researching this case because there's just so many videos to watch, so many articles to read, and so many details to figure out as you're going through. I spent a ton of time with this case, and as I was researching, but before you guys are seeing it now and before anybody knew I was covering this case, I actually kept getting comments on my videos saying that I actually look just like Grace. I didn't really see it myself, and I still kind of don't really see it myself, but I did show a picture of her to my roommates, and they said that I look like her too. She's also pretty close to being the same age as me, and we have a lot of the same dreams and aspirations in common, so I don't know if it makes me weird that looking like her or finding things in common with her made me feel so connected to her, but it really put this entire case into a new perspective for me. It's just so crazy, and just talking about it right now is giving me chills. I felt so close to a girl that I don't even know, just because I feel like I have such a connection with her. What happened to her can literally happen to anybody. It is just so terrifying. And even just the fact that we look a little bit similar, and the fact that we like a lot of the same things and have a lot of the same dreams, just makes it feel that much more real to me. But with that being said, if at any point you feel like you can't continue with this video, or you need a break and to come back later, please do so. I absolutely understand, and I would never be mad for someone clicking off a video if they needed to. And the last thing that I want to know is that I don't want to see any negative comments about Grace or anything about her case. I promise those comments will be deleted immediately. Please, as with every case, comment as if the family is watching. If you wouldn't say it directly to them, don't say it here. It's possible that the family may see it. Maybe the family won't see this video, I don't know, but some families do end up seeing my videos, and some families talk to me about the videos, and I would never want them to see anything disrespectful about their daughter or sister on this video. So again, I know I don't really even have to say this, but if you were thinking of commenting anything rude or negative about Grace Millane, do not do it. It will be deleted, and you will be blocked from this channel. Okay, I know that that was the longest intro ever, and I already know that people are going to be giving me crap about it in the comments, but it's whatever, it had to be said. But without any further delay, let's get into the case. Today, we are going to be discussing the murder of Grace Millane. Grace Emmy Rose Millane was born on December 2nd, 1996. Grace was from Wickford, Essex in England, and her parents were Gillian and David Millane, and she had two brothers, Michael and Declan. Grace was such an outgoing and artistic girl and just loved adventure and trying new things. She created such beautiful artwork, including sketches of various animals with absolutely beautiful watercolor. She also loved music and was very talented at playing hockey growing up. After graduating from high school, Grace went on to attend the University of Lincoln, graduating in September of 2018 with a bachelor's degree in advertising and marketing. After graduating, Grace decided to take a gap year to just get out there and backpack and travel and see what the world had to offer. She went with one of those organized groups who was set to travel with her, but she was technically traveling alone since she wasn't bringing anybody that she knew with her. This was her first time traveling alone, but she was absolutely ecstatic to be setting out on this new adventure. First, she spent 6 weeks in South America. She traveled around many different areas such as Chile and Peru, the same places that her own mother had visited when she was her age. Her next stop was New Zealand, and she was set to be there for 2 weeks. She arrived on the upper North Island of Cape Ringa on November 19th, then headed to Auckland, their largest metropolitan city, on November 30th. She checked into a backpacker's hostel, sharing a room with 4 other people. During her trips, she made sure to constantly send her parents and her 2 brothers photos of what she was doing several times a day, every single day. After being in New Zealand, she had planned on exploring Thailand and the Philippines and Australia. However, she never was able to make it to those destinations. While she was in New Zealand, Grace was using Tinder to meet up with different guys and go on dates with them. This just seemed like a casual thing that she was doing to get out there and meet different people as she was traveling. She first matched with a man who she had been messaging with on Facebook, and after talking for a bit, she met up with him on November 30th. The two ended up going back to the man's apartment in downtown Auckland to watch a movie, and she did end up staying the night there. But other than that, the date didn't really seem too remarkable, and nothing really out of the ordinary happened. Then, on December 1st, Grace matched up with another man on Tinder. This guy sent her a message, and the two started chatting pretty much just about how their days were going. He ended up asking her if she had plans for that day, and she said no, so he ended up asking her if she wanted to meet up with him for a drink at Sky City, and she agreed. So, At this point, a lot of the date with this man was captured on CCTV footage, so we know a lot of the things that she did that night, and we have a pretty extensive timeline. I will mention though that for quite some time, we did not know the identity of the man who she went on a date with, so for now, I'm just going to be referring to him as the man that she went on a date with because, again, during this specific time, nobody knew who this guy was. So by 5:37 p.m., Grace is seen leaving Base Backpackers and heads towards Federal Street. By 5:45, she arrived outside of Sky City wearing a black dress with white tennis shoes. Once she got there, she took a photo of a Christmas tree that she saw outside and then texted the picture to family members. On CCTV footage, we see her date show up. The two greeted each other with a hug and then went inside. They took the escalator up to Andy's Burger Bar, where they ordered drinks and chatted for about a half hour before leaving Sky City at 7:12 p.m. After this, they headed to Mexican Cafe, which was right across the street. Once they were at the Mexican Cafe, Grace ordered a sangria and the pair sat in the corner. The two just sort of people-watched those around them and talked about themselves and got to know each other. At this point in the date, Grace appeared to be enjoying herself. She was seen walking with her hand on his lower back and touching him as they were talking. Also, throughout the date, Grace was texting her friend about how the date was going. She wrote to her friend, "I'm on a date with this guy who is a manager of an oil company, and it's cocktail time," and texted cocktails all around. And then she texted, "He was like, it's my birthday tomorrow. We're getting smashed." So her birthday was December 2nd, so the very next day, and her date was basically saying that they were going to drink a lot and get smashed for her birthday. Her last message to her friend was, "I click with him so well, and I will let you know what happened tomorrow." These were the last text messages that she sent to her friend about the date. So the two had stayed at the Mexican Cafe and drank a good bit before they went up to the counter at 8:27 p.m. to close their tab. Her date paid the bill, which included 2 jugs of margarita and 1 of sangria. Still, at this point, Grace appears to be in a great mood. She was happy and chatting with the waitress. Once they left the Mexican Cafe at 8:30 p.m., they went to the Bluestone Room on Durham Lane, and the two sat down at a table. And still, both of them looked like they were having a great time. They were talking and laughing, and after sitting together for around 15 more minutes, the two started kissing. After the two had been kissing for a while, by 9:01 p.m., Grace's date bought them both shots of tequila and brought them back to the table. They cheered their glasses and took their shots. By 9:20 p.m., Grace got up from the table. It's not exactly sure why she did this, but it's thought that she just got up to go to the bathroom. However, while she was gone, her date picked up her purse, rifled through it for a bit, and then put it back on her seat. Again, not exactly sure why he did that or what he was looking for. After a few minutes, Grace returned and they left. After leaving at 9:29 p.m., her date left a comment on her Facebook profile picture saying, "Beautiful, very radiant." Then by 9:40 p.m., they arrived at City Life Auckland. This is a hotel and apartment combined complex type of thing. This is where her date lived, and it was right across the street from the Bluestone Room. Once at the complex, the two got into an elevator and rode up to the 3rd floor. And again, Grace appears to be happy and comfortable. Once they got off, they walked down the hallway and were no longer seen on CCTV footage. After this, we don't really know what for sure happened that night. What we do know is that this is the very last time that Grace was ever seen alive. Now, like I said, Grace's birthday was on December 2nd. Also, like I said, Grace stayed in contact with her family every single day while she was traveling. However, when her parents texted her happy birthday, she was not responding, and her family was automatically concerned, but they did wait a little bit longer to see if they would hear back from her. When yet another day passed without hearing anything from Grace, her parents knew that something had to be wrong. So they got into contact with the Auckland police and reported her missing. The first thing they did was check the hostel that she was staying at and question those who were with her when she was there, and they told them that she had not returned back to her room on December 1st. Initially, though, they did not suspect any foul play in her case. They said that they were keeping an open mind and they were going out and trying to examine any surveillance video that they could. They also released a picture of her and asked for anybody in the public who saw her that day to come forward. They said that they were still very hopeful that they would find Grace, but her family was not comforted by this at all. At this point, she hadn't posted on any of her social medias for days and hadn't been in contact with anybody. That was so out of character for her and hadn't happened at all since she left to travel. She had not gone a single day since she left without at least contacting somebody or posting on her social medias. So, her family and many others took to social media to speak out about her disappearance. Her father also flew out from England to New Zealand to speak with police directly. By the time he arrived, police conceded that the longer she was missing, the more concerned they were. At this point, police said that they had grave fears for Grace's safety, and by December 8th, they started to investigate her disappearance as a homicide investigation. Now, like I said, the police came out to the public to ask anybody to come forward if they thought that they had seen Grace. One witness claimed to see her alive and well at a grocery store, while another one said that they saw her hitchhiking on the southern motorway. But these sightings were not able to be confirmed, and the more police looked at surveillance video, the more suspicious they got of the man that she was last seen with. So, police used all of the surveillance video that they were finding to finally pin down the apartment complex that she was last in, and they searched it. This is when police came out and said that they found evidence that Grace was no longer alive. They took a vehicle of interest and had a man in custody as their prime suspect. But, like I said at the beginning, for quite some time, police would not reveal who this man was. Apparently, they had found out who he was pretty easily because of this comment that he had left on Grace's profile picture. So when police initially found this man, they actually sent him a message over Facebook to ask to speak to him. This was a very informal interview, and he told police that he was with Grace that night, but that they went their separate ways at 10 p.m. that night, and he doesn't know what happened to her after that, and he hasn't seen her since. So then, after exchanging these messages, another detective planned to go ahead and get in contact with him for another interview. They actually went over to the City Life complex, and just to their surprise, they actually did see him there. But he also noticed police, so he started running. Police chased him until they caught him at a nearby store. So, this is when they took him in for a real interview, and he was sticking to his story that the two parted ways at 10 p.m. But he was confronted with the fact that police had CCTV footage of his complex, so he changed his story. So, this is what this man said happened the night that the two went to his apartment. So, according to Grace's date, once they got into his apartment, the two were pretty drunk and they started kissing for a bit. While doing so, the TV was on, so Grace had asked him to turn the TV off as well as all of the lights. After this, he says that the two started talking about 50 Shades of Grey. He said that she was telling him all sort of these sexual things that she used to do with her exes. He said that there were a lot of explicit things that she was talking about, so after this, the two started to have sex. Once they started getting into it, according to him, Grace brought up bondage. He said that she started biting him and asked her to bite him, so he did. He said that he stopped and asked her, "Is this really what you want me to do?" And she said, "Yeah." And she said that she wanted him to get really rough with everything. He said that she was the one pushing him down, making things very violent, but it was consensual. I am trying to be more vague. I'm not trying to be graphic, but you sort of know what I'm talking about. There is a lot more detail of what I'm talking about in a lot of the sources below, and you can go ahead and read that if you want to get more into specifics, but for the sake of this channel, I'm not comfortable talking about that sort of detail, so I'm not going to. So this guy said that the two then ended up on the floor and started taking intimate photos of each other. After this, he said that she asked him to hold her throat as hard as he could. He said that after the two were done, he went up to go to the bathroom and then he fell asleep in the shower. He said that he then remembers waking up in the shower, but it was still really dark, so he just crawled back into bed and didn't notice anything out out of the ordinary. At this point, he said that he didn't see anything, so he just assumed that Grace had left, but she hadn't. She had actually died and was still laying on the floor of his apartment. She had died of strangulation. So he claims that she accidentally died during their rough sex and that he didn't actually know somehow. He said that when he woke up the next morning, he saw that Grace was still laying on the floor and said that blood was coming out of her nose. He said that he tried screaming for her and moving her to see if she was okay, but of course she wasn't. So that is his entire story. But of course, police didn't buy this, and they believed that this was an intentional murder, not an accident. And there is a lot of evidence and even more CCTV footage that tells exactly what happened after this night. So now let's get into the timeline of things that happened after Grace had died. So first, this man had made some Google searches. At 1:29 a.m., he searched for Waitakere Ranges. I'm so sorry if I butchered that, but that is a mountain range in New Zealand near Auckland. Then at 1:31 a.m., he searched for the term hottest fire. Then, after those two searches, he went to a porn website and watched several videos. Then, between 1:45 a.m. and 1:49 p.m., he took pictures of Grace's naked body. Remember, he said that Grace was alive when he took this picture, so that can mean one of two things. First, he's lying and he took pictures of her dead body in this photo, and he's just a sick pervert who just wanted pictures of her dead naked body for some sort of trophy. Or he took the pictures of her while she was still alive, but he had already planned to kill her, because we know that the Google searches for the mountain range and the fire are clearly indications that he was looking for some ways to dispose of a body or burn her body. So he either searched these things after killing her or before killing her, and he either took the pictures of her dead naked body, or he took them of her while she was still alive, but after making all of these searches on how to hide a body. Neither of these things look good for him. By 6 a.m., there was another Google search for rigor mortis, then a search for extra large garbage bags, and then for carpet cleaner. By 7:50 a.m. that morning, this guy was back at it again on Tinder and was messaging another woman that he had been chatting with before. He initially said, "Good morning, how are you?" And then he messages her again saying it was okay if she didn't feel like going on a date with him anymore. But she did message back and say that she did still want to meet up with him. By 8 a.m., we can see him entering the elevator by himself, then we see him leave his apartment. He then went to the warehouse on Elliott Street and bought a large gray suitcase. He can be seen browsing around trying to decide which one to buy before picking one out. By 8:14, he can be seen going back to his apartment with this gray suitcase. At this point, after returning to his apartment, he told police that he tried overdosing on medication. He said that he just wanted to end his own life because he had just had enough. He said that as he was still in shock, he tried putting Grace's body into the suitcase, but he couldn't fit her whole body in. So at 8:35 a.m., he once again goes back into his apartment's elevator, and this time he went out to a Countdown supermarket. There, he bought a carpet cleaner, a pack of gloves, and a pack of gum. He paid for all of these items in cash at a self-service checkout and got back to his place at around 8:40. We can once again see him on his apartment's elevator with all of these items. So by 10:33 a.m., he left his apartment once again. He goes outside, walks towards Queen Street, and catches a taxi. While in the taxi, he appeared relatively calm and happy, though he did show some subtle signs of being nervous. A short time later, by 10:40 a.m., he got to Apex Car Rental Shop and rented a car to use for 24 hours. Here, he paid with a credit card, then drove back home. Once he got back home, he was on Google once again, and this time he searched for the term flesh-eating birds and are there vultures in New Zealand. Then at 2:53 p.m., he left his apartment once again. About an hour later, at around 4 p.m., he is seen on CCTV footage at the Revelry Bar on Ponaspee. This is where he met up for a date with the woman that he had been messaging on Tinder. During this date, the woman said he appeared like he had gained some weight compared to his pictures, but she said that he had very big, distinctive eyes and was very clean and well groomed. She said that she had asked him a couple of questions about himself, but all of the questions that he asked her were very basic, surface level questions. So she had asked him where he had met his friends. He told her that all of his friends are cops and said that his closest friend is coming to New Zealand to become a crown prosecutor. She said that he told her that his friends were having a tough time because a lot of bodies were going missing at the Waitakere, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that again, ranges. He also told her a fun fact that police dogs could only smell 4 feet deep, so if a body was buried deeper than that, the dog wouldn't be able to smell it. The woman had actually been a former journalist, so their conversation got steered towards a murder trial that she had once been to. He then said to her, "It's crazy how a guy can make one wrong move and then go to jail for the rest of his life." He then went on to explain about how he had heard about this guy who asked his girlfriend to have rough sex, but then it went wrong and so she died because of it. She said that he told her that this guy was charged with manslaughter and that he went to jail for a very long time. At this point, the woman said that she felt very uneasy about the conversation, so she tried changing the subject. He could also tell that she was uncomfortable, so he did try to steer the conversation away from murder and cadaver dogs, but again, she was still feeling very uneasy about this entire situation. By around 5:25 p.m., the two ended their date. Before they said goodbye, he pointed out where his car was and said, "My car is this way," and she had actually parked on the same street as him, but she said that she was just feeling so uneasy that her instincts just kind of kicked in and told her to walk a different way. So she walked down a different road even though it was in the opposite direction of where her car really was, just because of how uncomfortable he made her. After the date, he went back home before leaving once again at 7:20. By 7:30 p.m. that night, he is spotted again with his red rental car in the parking garage at the Countdown supermarket. Here, he was browsing a rug doctor's stand. He went back home at 7:45 empty-handed, but headed out once again to go and rent a rug cleaning machine. We can see him bringing the rug cleaning machine and some cleaning soap to his apartment. After taking it to his apartment about an hour later, we see him go back into the elevator with the cleaning machine and then went back to the store and he returned it. By 9:26 that night, he goes back to the hotel lobby. Remember, he lives in a sort of hotel apartment complex combo, and then he got a luggage cart and took it up to his room. He is then seen leaving his apartment with the luggage cart. On the cart, there are 2 suitcases and he has a black sports bag. He then leaves the apartment complex with the luggage carts and then puts the luggage into his rental car. He then went and parked his car in the Wilson's parking lot and left it there overnight. After this, he once again goes to the store, and this time he bought gloves and stain remover. By 6:14 a.m., he's back up. He got back to his rental car and then started heading towards the mountain ranges. By 6:50 a.m., he stopped at the Western ITM hardware store and buys a shovel with an orange head and 4 bolts. He then continued onto Scenic Drive, buried the suitcase, which contained Grace's body, in a shallow grave, and then he covered it in branches. By 9:30 a.m., he returned to Auckland. He went to his apartment to grab a bag and headed out once again. After this, he dropped his bags off at the Mint dry cleaners, then headed to the warehouse again to buy another suitcase. After this, he goes to the car wash to clean out the inside and outside of his rental car, and he also cleaned a pair of shoes. He then took the shovel out of his car and left it there, leaning it against the wall. Then, by 4:50 p.m., he took all of the belongings that Grace left at his apartment to Albert Park and put them in the trash. The next thing we know is that on December 6th at 5:18 p.m., he left once again and took an Uber down to Mission Bay. We still don't know the exact reason for this trip, but it's thought that it was done to get rid of Grace's phone, because to this day, her phone still has not been found. He got home at 5:58 p.m. Then at 8:43 a.m., he left once again, this time wearing a suit. Then we can see police officers in the lobby of the apartment complex talking to the front desk people. We then see the man walking around outside of the complex while police are still inside. After he walked off, police went out and started chasing him until they eventually caught up with him. This is when he spoke to police in person for the first time and told them that him and Grace went their separate ways at 10 p.m. that night. Once they caught up with him, police took him into the station for his official interview. At this interview, he was asked to give a DNA sample and he happily agreed, saying, "Yep, 100%, I haven't done anything wrong." After this interview on December 7th, this is when police came out and made it known that they did have a suspect in the case, and by December 8th, he finally admits that Grace was actually dead. This is when he told them the story that we discussed earlier about how it was all an accident and how he went to go get these cleaning supplies and everything that he did to get rid of Grace's body and all of the evidence. Then he actually told police where she was buried and led them to her body. But when he was asked if he killed Grace, he said no. But this didn't matter. He was under arrest for Grace's murder.
I went to the warehouse at the atrium and brought a suitcase. I went back and I was just in shock because it just didn't seem right. I left to go and get cleaning products. So I messaged a friend and said I'll meet you at Revelry. After finishing drinks with her, I got back to city life. And all the time I just kept saying I'm sorry. And then I went downstairs and I grabbed the porter thing and I put the suitcase on top of the porter thing. I drove the hire car into Wilson's car park and parked it. I woke up the next day at about 5 a.m. and drove the car out to Cumu. At first I picked up a shovel from ITM at Cumu. I ended up driving towards the Waitakaries. I went into the bush, I dug a hole, I went and got the suitcase and I covered the hole. And then I drove.
Where is her possessions?
I threw them in the rubbish.
Whereabouts?
Albert Park rubbish.
Right. So what items of her property have been disposed of in Albert Park?
Everything.
All of her clothing?
Everything that was in the room.
Right. Whereabouts did you clean the car, the outside of the car?
I think it was in Henderson. I don't know West very well.
Okay. And what did you use to clean the car?
Water blaster thing from the car cleaning place.
Did she have any injuries?
Not that I can remember. I was just panicking.
Did you inflict any injuries on her that caused her to die?
No.
Did you kill Grace Millane? Okay. And you're under arrest for the murder of Grace Millane on or about the 2nd of December. Do you understand?
Yep.
Did you intend to cause her death?
No.
Are you ready to take us to where she is?
Yeah.
By that next day, police came to the press to let everybody know that their search for Grace had come to an end. The entire family and police were all in complete shambles, and they were all just so disappointed with this outcome. But for quite a while, they still did not release his identity and blurred any surveillance video with him in it. By the time he was charged with Grace's murder, his identity was still being withheld, but finally, after a few months of being held, his identity was finally made public. Turns out, the man who murdered Grace Millane was 28-year-old Jesse Kempson. Jesse Kempson was born in December of 1991 and was raised in New Zealand. When he was 3 years old, his parents separated, so he was raised mostly by his father and his grandfather, since his mother had moved pretty far away. In 2013, he had ended up moving to Australia for unknown reasons. He told people that it was to take care of a sick grandmother, but I don't think that that's true. I think that turned out to be a lie. But while he was in Australia, he worked as a bartender and a builder for a bit. He then came back to New Zealand in 2016, then went on to attend Aotea College and played softball there. So it turns out the main reason why his identity was not being released was because he was actually facing 2 other sexual assault charges. One of these cases took place only 8 months before Grace's murder, and this victim also was a British tourist in New Zealand visiting family for a couple of weeks. While she was there, the two met on Tinder, and it was pretty much the same type of situation. The two had drank and then went back to his apartment where he raped her because she refused his sexual advances, and he thought that she owed him her body because he bought her drinks. This victim actually had not initially reported the attack because she was so terrified of him and was scared that he was going to track her down and hurt her once again. But once she saw the headlines of what happened to Grace, she reported her sexual assault immediately. Then, he was also accused of sexually assaulting his girlfriend. This case was an ordeal that lasted for months, and we didn't find out the exact details of this case because they weren't released, but it was said that these details were just so sickening, and that's the reason that they just weren't released. So now let's discuss the trial for Grace's murder. The trial started on November 4th, 2019, with a jury that consisted of 5 men and 7 women, and Jesse put in a plea of not guilty. The prosecution argued that Jesse Kempson purposely strangled Grace Millane after the two had slept together, then did several internet searches on how to dispose of her body rather than dialing 111, which shows that he had absolutely no intentions of helping her. Then the defense argued that Grace's death was just a tragic accident from sexual misadventure. They said that Grace was into bondage and then asked him to choke her really hard, and then things just went terribly wrong. They said that his actions following were that of a man who was in a state of panic and shock. So let's get into what the prosecution argued about Jesse Kempson. So they painted this picture of a man who is a sexual deviant who used Tinder to lure in young women for sex. There were several witnesses who went to the stand to say that they had also gone on dates with Jesse, which included sleeping together and choking. Another woman had said that the two had spoken for a couple of weeks, and in their conversations, Jesse had told her that he likes feet, dominating, and strangulation. But the two never ended up meeting up because this woman did not feel comfortable doing the things that he was asking her to do as they were messaging back and forth. Another woman took to the stand to talk about her experience with Jesse. She said that she went on a date with him expecting just to go to the bar and get some drinks, but instead they ended up going to his apartment, where she straight up told him that they were not going to be sleeping together. At this point, he grabbed her, held her down, and tried laying on her so that she couldn't breathe, until she just kicked and eventually got him off of her. Again, just like what I was telling you about what happened with him and Grace, there are a lot more very uncomfortable details about what he did to this young woman, and if you do want to find out more, check the resources below because that is all outlined there, but I am not comfortable talking about everything that she said. This woman also told the jury about all of the lies that he told her, and this is very similar to many of the lies that he had been telling to many different women. So throughout all of these Tinder dates, at some point he told one of the girls that he was this owner of a big company making upwards of $150,000 per year. He told another woman about how he had cancer. This lie actually came after a woman refused to sleep with him. He went into the bathroom and then came out and tried guilting her by saying that he felt really bad and that he had cancer. He told another woman that he had a law degree. He said that his parents died and he was adopted by a rich family. Then we know that he told Grace that he was a manager of this big oil company. That was a lie. The thing he told this journalist that he went on a date with right after Grace's murder, that all of his friends were cops, that was a lie. He just kept lying and lying about literally everything. Of course, the next thing in the trial was all of the surveillance video that they had of Grace and Jesse's night, and then everything that he did after her murder. Buying the suitcases, going on this date with this other woman, getting carpet cleaner and a rental car, and then cleaning out the rental car. The journalist he went on a date with also took the stand to talk about her experience with Jesse. Again, we know that he was talking about how a guy can make one wrong move and end up in jail forever, and that he knows somebody who went to jail for accidentally killing his girlfriend when they were sleeping together. The prosecution claimed that he was actually testing out his story on this woman to see if she would buy it, how she would react before trying it on police, and we know that he did end up trying the same story on police later. The next thing they did was talk about the crime scene. As we know, he tried his best to clean everything off of his carpet, but after being sprayed with luminol, it showed a very different story. There was a decent amount of blood or some sort of other bodily fluid, and this type of thing doesn't just happen over an accident. Then they discussed all of the inconsistencies within his story. This entire time, he was sticking with his story that this entire thing was an accident, and he had no idea that she had died until that next morning when he saw her laying there. He said that he was asleep with the light off after the sexual encounter. However, as we saw from before, he was doing a good amount of internet searches on his phone when he said that he was actually sleeping. Then, as we discussed earlier, he took those intimate photos after making these internet searches. So again, it's either did he already kill her at that point or was he planning on killing her? Either one, neither of these look good, but I will also note that these pictures were taken with the light on. So, if we remember from earlier, he told this story about how Grace had asked him to turn off the TV and turn off the lights before they started. Then, as they were going, they ended up on the floor, and that's when they took these pictures of each other. So, did they turn the light on again and then take the pictures and then get up and turn it back off? He never mentioned that. He said that it was dark the entire time, so dark that he didn't see her dead body laying on the floor for some reason. That also didn't add up. We also know that in the middle of the night, someone looked up pornography on his phone. He literally didn't even have an answer for that. Then they spoke about the autopsy that was completed for Grace's body. Of course, the cause of death was strangulation from prolonged pressure on her neck. So, a pathologist first argued that it would take a good 5 to 10 minutes before she would have actually died. The pathology expert argued that he had not heard of another single case in New Zealand of someone dying from a consensual single sexual encounter. They also pointed out how she had several bruises on her shoulders and arms that were consistent with somebody being restrained. So that's pretty much what the prosecution was arguing. The defense then came back and upheld their story about how all of this was just a horrible accident. Their main focus was on the state of Grace's body and her previous sexual history. They said that Grace had a decent amount of alcohol in her system before her death, so that could have affected her breathing, making it much less time that it would take for her to die from strangulation. They also said that the bruises on her body weren't necessarily from restraints, but they could have been love bites, since as we know from before, Jessie told police that she had asked him to bite her. They also said that she had no other defensive wounds on her that could indicate that she was trying to fight him off, which this doesn't really make sense to me at all, because if she's being restrained by a man who is significantly bigger than her, she may not have even been strong enough to have those defensive wounds on her while he was restraining her, because again, if someone's restraining you so much that you can't even move, you're not going to have any other defensive marks on you. So to me, that just seemed like a pretty stupid argument. They then called some people to the witness stand of people who knew Grace. One of her previous partners said that the two would experiment with bondage and asphyxiation. They said that they had a safe word and that Grace would tap out if she got too uncomfortable. Another friend came to the stand to say that the two had previously had girl talk where they talked about their sex lives, and Grace admitted that she liked it when men put their hands around her neck. They had also read off over 400 messages dating all the way back to 2017, all of which talked about bondage and other things like that with various men. And there was evidence that she had met up with at least one of these two men to do the acts that she was talking about. The defense also talked about Jesse's past and how his grandfather was an alcoholic and he was estranged from his dad, and that his dad had left his family, and that was all really hard on him and caused him to be a drunk himself, and he had confidence issues, and that is what caused him to lie about who he truly was. So making a bunch of excuses for why he was lying to woman after woman about who he truly was. All in all, it seemed like much of their argument was based on Grace's character rather than actual evidence. We have very clear evidence of every single one of his movements before and after her death, so it's really hard to argue that this was an accident for someone who went to such great lengths to conceal her body. All in all, this trial lasted for 3 weeks. After hearing testimony and closing statements from the prosecution and the defense, the jury went into deliberation on November 22nd, 2019. The jury only deliberated for 5 hours before they came back with their verdict. They found Jesse Kempson guilty of intentionally murdering Grace, and he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 17 years before he'd be considered for parole. After this, he appealed his sentencing multiple times, but all were denied. Then, in October of 2020, he also went to trial for charges related to the physical, sexual, emotional, and financial abuse of his ex-girlfriend. In total, there were 8 charges brought forward against him. 2 charges of sexual violation by unlawful sexual connection, 3 charges of male assaults to a female, 2 of assaults with a weapon, and 1 of threatening to kill. Thankfully, he was found guilty of all of these charges. For this, he was sentenced to 7 years. Then, in November of 2020, Jesse appeared in front of a judge once again for the rape charge of the woman that he raped after meeting her for a Tinder date. For this, he was charged with rape and he was sentenced to 3.5 years. But unfortunately, all of these sentences will be served concurrently rather than being stacked on one another. To this day, Jesse Kempson still hasn't said exactly why he ended up killing Grace. As far as I have seen, he still says that it was a complete accident, pretty much puts all of the blame on Grace, and will not say exactly what ended up happening that caused all of this. We have no idea if she did anything that made him mad, or if she turned him down, or what really happened to cause him to strangle her to death. Like, I can't even imagine how terrified she must have been, but whether he was strangling her because he was angry at her and didn't actually mean to kill her or whatever it was, it does not matter. He strangled her to death, and I am so happy that they actually found justice for this. I will say that I am a little bit upset that he only has to serve 17 years before being considered for parole, but it's not a guarantee that he actually gets paroled. I'm just hoping that after seeing his extensive and very, very disturbing and violent history, that the parole board will realize that he is and will continue to be a danger to society and every single woman that he comes into contact with. I'm also really glad that they didn't just quit after they got the murder conviction and actually took the effort to bring justice to the women that he abused for so long, even before the murder. Being raped or sexually assaulted is literally one of the worst things that can happen to a woman, and it's something that sticks with her for the rest of her life. And after this happens, she is changed forever. So I'm just glad that he actually had to be held accountable for this. Grace's family was very happy with this sentence and were happy to see justice be served for their beautiful young daughter. Grace was so young and had such huge aspiration for herself. I absolutely admire her motivation to just get out there and see the world. She was so brave for taking that step, even if it meant going it alone. I know that I wouldn't travel by myself, and the fact that she did has my respect 100%. So that is all I have for today's video, and now I want to know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. But if you did like this video, please make sure to go ahead and leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to turn on the notifications to be notified of any future videos. Don't forget to go ahead and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Both will be linked down below. And if you have absolutely any case suggestions, please make sure to go ahead and send those suggestions over to RachelShannonCases@gmail.com. With that, I hope you guys have a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!